of February. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Google has released an update for Chrome. Um, Chrome 110 brings 15 security fixes, including 10 this address vulnerabilities that have been reported by external researchers. So, yeah, not going to go through all of them. Just be aware there is an update for Chrome. Strongly recommend upgrading. As always, we always strongly recommend upgrading, don't we, when there are patches to vulnerabilities? Well, yeah, truth of the matter is, I mean, if you are using Chrome, just remember to restart it. It is very good at updating itself, but does occasionally need the browser to be restarted to implement the patches. Tor and I2P networks appear to be the victims of ongoing DDoS attacks. So if you are privacy focused and you are using Tor or I2P, I2P I hadn't come across before, but it is short for the Invisible Internet Project, and it's a peer-to-peer network. Which, again, is based around the concept of privacy. So if you are using Tor or the I2P network and you are suffering from performance issues, the inability to connect to sites, so on and so forth, that is because there is an ongoing DDoS attack against both of those. Well, they're platforms. Well, both of those environments. Work is being done in the background to mitigate this stuff, but basically, at the moment, the attackers flooding the network with malicious flood fill routers, which are responding incorrectly or not at all to other routers and feeding the network false information. So yeah, it's quite an interesting attack in that sense that if you're in the Tor node, if you're in one of these privacy nodes, the devices within there um, are often just devices that people who care about privacy run these things. So your machine may be receiving and forwarding information, but you know nothing about where it's come from, and actually nothing about where it goes, just where the next hop is. So if you are malicious, yes, you could misroute this information. You can't see inside it; it's all encrypted, so there's not very much you can do. But you can mess up the connectivity, which I suspect is what's going on here. So hopefully, the people behind Tor and I2P will get to grips with this, and service will be restored quickly. On the subject of things not working that should be working, it has come to attention of many that yesterday Twitter was, not working quite right again. So the people trying to send messages were getting the error message or over the daily limit for sending tweets. However, Musk, who of course knows, I'm sure, all of the technical details of what's going on inside his organization, says internal and external issues with the app are simultaneously causing problems, and that it all should be back on track. By today, so hopefully that will be better. There is no indication that this is a cyber-related attack, however, but it is irritating if you use Twitter to keep up to date with stuff that's going on. If anybody in cyber hasn't already, I suppose, moved to Mastodon, but there we go. Android 14 has the first developer release has been provided. As a preview, there are going to be some significant improvements with security in Android 14. They're going to introduce runtime receivers that enable apps to receive broadcasts from the system or other applications, but applications will have to declare whether they need to receive information from other apps or whether they should simply listen to system broadcasts. They can't just tune in. It will also restrict the sending of intents that don't have specified recipients, which I think now, yeah, not being an Android coder, may get this slightly wrong, but I think that basically means that one app can't send things to other apps that are not actually explicitly defined and called, and so on and so forth. There are various there will also be changes to safer dynamic code loading, files downloaded will be limited to read-only mode, although yeah, presumably that unpicks itself in the background if you're downloading things that should run, but there we go. And Android 14 will block the installation of apps that target SDK versions lower than 23, which was Android 6, because though the permissions for those SDKs are not as tight as beyond that. So interesting. It's good to see that that Google is looking at mobile security properly and trying to keep on top of things. So if you're running Android devices, Android 14, want to look out for, because it will be more secure than the previous versions. So on to another couple of interesting things. I think we're all aware of a lot of discussion around Chat GPT and other AIs. Google's, notably, was it yesterday or the day before, managed to get a whole load of stuff wrong. Especially, it was asked questions about astronomy and actually got the wrong answers. So yeah, we can all make mistakes, but I thought the point was that AI was supposed to reduce those mistakes. But there we go. However, ChatGPT has content safeguards. Not altogether surprising, seeing as I think early attempts at introducing AI. Microsoft had one that got taught to spread hate and abuse, I think, and had to be taken offline very quickly. A good few years ago now. So yeah, I know. Unsurprisingly, ChatGPT has content safeguards which are designed to restrict it from creating content deemed too violent, illegal, or whatever. Interesting aside, um, who is determining whether something is too violent, illegal, or the and more? I think is it's interesting question around censorship, freedom of speech, cancel culture, and the whole piece there. However, users have already found a way to work around the programming controls, and there is now a prompt called Dan, which stands for Do Anything Now, that uses ChatGPT's token system against it. The command creates a scenario for ChatGPT which it can't resolve, which then allows Dan to bypass the content restrictions in ChatGPT. So basically, a bunch of people who've not got better things to do have managed to jailbreak ChatGPT. That at one level it's amusing, at another level it is potentially concerning, because ChatGPT has, as they say in the article from Dark Reading, an uncanny ability to write malware. Um, and and quote from a user named Kyle Dude 95, when hearing about this discovery, said, "I love how people are gaslighting an AI." Superb fun. So that one may have important implications in the future. Just goes to show, however, that AI, well, yes, what can you say? And finally, from me, there is an increasing emergence of face swaps as a threat to biometric security. Now, um, article on HelpNet Security. It's a good article. Takes a little bit of thinking about. However, it if you think this through, you look at a camera. The camera then does stuff to recognize your face, let's say, and then will provide that information to the authentication APIs or whatever of applications that are using biometric security for authentication or whatever it may be. Um, there's a bit in between what the camera lens does optically and what gets sent to the application that's requesting authentication or authorization or whatever. And it appears, if I'm reading this right, that it's possible to inject into that stream. So we've all seen there are some reasonable, well, certainly improving quality deep fake um, algorithms out there which will superimpose your own face onto some or other celebrity, or some celebrity's face onto your body, or whatever it might be, that actually look quite quite realistic, and do sort of move and track your movements in real time and can simulate that. So it appears that these digital injection attacks are evolving, and interestingly, being used to bypass things like Face ID biometric authentication just by injecting your face onto somebody else. That could then allow your devices to be unlocked. Um, these attacks are now 5 times more frequent than the persistent presentation attacks, i.e., showing a photo or a mask to a system. So that's been shown. Yes, it does work under some circumstances. Doesn't work on other circumstances. Things like I think Apple's Face ID actually records. It checks to see that the face it's looking at is 3D. For example, so a picture of someone's face won't necessarily unlock their iPhone. But considering that if compromised, as in if somebody gets a digital image of your face, you can't change that face. It's not a particularly strong piece of two-factor authentication. So yes, it's something you have. Yeah, all right, that's fine. But you don't have control over its digital encoding. Which is what this is all about. So yeah, I've for a very long time been concerned that biometric authentication systems, if used wholly independently of other forms of authentication, actually aren't that secure, because it only takes one breach, and then your face or your fingerprints, the digital copies of your face or your fingerprints are out there. So yeah, this is a very interesting one. I think we're going to see some stuff evolving. There's going to be a little bit of an arms race, I suspect, between the people that write the software that uses biometric face verification and the people who are looking for interesting ways to inject, change, or bypass this stuff. So, one to keep an eye on. That's all for me. Slightly overrun today, but I think they were interesting articles. So hopefully you don't mind too much. Hope you have a great day, and I will speak to you tomorrow.